It's funny. I feel like I can tell because our conversations have a little bit more tangents when our latency is so low.
Because it's not such a drag
Yeah, like when our
emotionally,
well, yeah,
energetically.
like when it's too high, it's like we need to stay on topic because any tangents like
Right.
wait, what are you replying to? Oh, sorry, wait, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the worst thing ever. It makes me wish that it makes it worth it that you should fly out here every time we do a podcast, and then you can go home.
It's gonna be a little bit harder to explain that.
Well, it wouldn't take that long. There and back in a day.
Right? I mean, my wife would be 100% convinced I'm cheating on her, but once a week.
I know, how disappointing for her when she finds out you're not cheating on her, but in fact, you're just recording a
This is
podcast.
worse. Right.
But as you know, this is the measure of an episode where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek and not just Deadpool versus Wolverine.
What's on your mind, Paul?
I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and we do this using 3 criteria. The first one is there sci-fi that has been written into the plot that it cannot be removed without drastically changing the plot? Is that sci-fi presented in a unique or novel fashion? And is there a moral or ethical dilemma that a character faces? I'm Jonathan.
I'm Paul. And this week, we watched Star Trek The Discovery, Season 4.
Look, it's the Discovery.
It's there goes the Discovery.
Season 4,
Uh,
yeah. All
yeah,
all
season.
13 episodes.
It felt like it felt more like 20 episodes as I was watching the recap because, like you do, you want to come prepared to a podcast.
Sure, and
Not
watch.
that I don't watch the show.
Well, but I mean, after watching 13 hours, it gets a little muddled, and B, it gets a little muddled.
Yeah,
Which is the same point, but I felt it was such a strong point, it was worth mentioning twice.
yeah. And I only heard it the second time, so
Right?
mission
That's why I
accomplished.
say things twice, so you can hear it. That's actually why I say things twice, so you can hear it.
And I'm Paul. And here's the thing that I hate the most about this show.
The fact that we have to record every week?
No, no.
Which
That's
show?
second.
The
That's the
podcast?
second. No, this shit. No, Discovery.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And here's what I hate the most. I have to say it after you say it. It's ingrained. Uh, Michael Burnham.
Yeah, me too.
Here's the thing. This is not just endemic to this show.
Oh, was that genuinely what you were gonna say you hated the most? I thought you were
Oh
gonna say
yeah.
something about her.
I
Okay.
mean, not necessarily the character per se, but perhaps the acting choice of whenever life is not being threatened immediately, I'm going to whisper. And it's a
Mm,
thing that I'm noticing in a lot of television these days. I think mostly in sort of the genre television. I've been noticing this, like when everybody has to be we have to signal that the things that I'm saying, you can't determine just from the things that I'm saying that they're supposed to have gravitas. I need to whisper them. So you have to turn up the television to hear what I'm saying. I hate it. I hate this idea that because you're not saying like phaser, red alert, phasers on stun, like because you're not yelling something like that, that you have to be whispering.
right, there's no
And
talking. Yeah.
there's just no talking. And I want there to be like a straight character who is just like, why are you guys whispering? Look,
Right. Yeah.
like just looking around, like, are we next to a nursery or something?
Oh, sorry, I thought this was
I
a secret.
that's the thing. I feel like everything is a secret when they're
Mhm.
standing still.
Yeah. So there is an explanation for it, and it is aggravating the
Mhm.
end. Like there's no but to that.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
I was trying
I
to
thought you
think.
were going to be like, there's an acting thing that they teach you in acting school, and this is why
Oh,
they're doing.
no, no, no.
That's what I.
It's a sound editing thing. And it's you can only get your louds so loud, and after that they become too distorted. But you can get your quiets, especially with how sensitive microphones now, you can get your quiets quiet. And so to make the louds have more impact, you have to bring things down even quieter. So when the louds do hit, they feel louder than otherwise would be.
Right, but I'm not the only person who hates this, right? Do
Oh,
you
yeah,
notice
no,
this?
yes, yes, I
Okay.
noticed, yeah. I
And
mean
this isn't just old geezer Paul, like, I got can't hear television, I gotta turn it up. It's I can hear them. I just don't like this practice of now I have to whisper whenever I'm saying something.
mhm,
I
yeah,
feel like she does it the most on the show.
right.
Like, for example, Saru. I was gonna say Brew again. Saru doesn't ever whisper. He kind of actually is very, I guess, not monotone, but in
Even
volume
keel,
wise.
yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't really ever yell or not
Mhm,
yell. Like he
mhm.
just sort of says stuff. And that is even weirder because he's not whispering, but she's saying something to him. Actually, this is why. Because everything they give her to say is supposed to be this thing where she's informing whoever she's talking to what the right thing to do is,
Uh-huh.
right? And the receiving end of that, they're always supposed to be like, "Oh, you're right. I should have been whispering all along."
Right, but also, like, we're now in season 4, we've wrapped up season 4, like, how often does Burnham have to be right before people are like, "Alright, Michael, what should we do? Alright, let's do that, it'll work."
Why do they even bother showing up for work?
Right, yeah,
She does everything, and this is okay, so we've already bitched about this.
I know.
The idea that she
3
is
times now, I know.
maybe this is just a giant reference of Mary Sue, because Mary Sue is historically Star Trek, as we know.
Huh,
Like it
I actually did not remember that, so
Yeah. So maybe the writers are just
we're like,
this
"Fine,
is
you
just
want a
like
Mary Sue? I'll give you a
yeah,
Mary Sue." Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah,
So maybe we have to give it a pass because of that, but it's almost becoming like, yes, we know, and we're doing it on purpose
right.
because everything she does is is the riskiest thing she could do, the right thing to do, and the
Mhm.
most successful thing
Yeah.
that could have been done.
Yeah, like, just in the first episode, she's the one who gives the suggestion about the Moth People's navigation. Book was down there, like, he could have figured it out, and she could have been like, "Yeah, that's great, let's go with that." Even to follow that up with, like, she was like, "No, we need to give it no strings attached, like, that's how this will work." And it was right, so my note was, she had a very smug look on her face, but that's okay, she earned it, she was right.
Right? She's probably getting so tired of being right all the time.
Right? She's like, "Why do you guys talk to me about options? We're doing it my way. Like, just figure it out." Yeah.
Yeah. I think this concept that we're talking about is one of these stakes that is driving it farther and farther away from Star Trek because and closer and closer to Star Wars. This was the most Star Warsian season of Discovery yet.
Okay. Oh,
And yeah,
just elaborate.
it's just starting to feel like when you have a bunch of different races sitting around a table talking about what they need to do and what the effects are- of whatever decision they're making are,
So very
and
episode
there's
1. Like,
well, just I feel like even in if you think about Star Wars when they're in the cantina, they're just a bunch of weird looking aliens sitting around
mhm.
for the fact that they're aliens.
Right, right.
But the adventure concept, like if this was Ray from Star Wars episode whatever
Mhm.
6, no,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
7, 8,
So
9,
right, right.
9,
Yeah, 7.
9.
Okay. Mhm.
Is it 7? Yeah,
That's when she starts. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Yep.
5, 6, 7. Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can understand my confusion where it's like, oh yeah, there are multiples of 3. Oh yeah, it starts on 7. That doesn't make any sense.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Right?
Mhm.
Like it should start on 6, 3, or 0. That's easier.
Right.
But yeah, so if you were to just think that, just put in your mind that Michael Burnham is actually Ray and she's commanding a ship, and all of a sudden it makes it better. It
Sure.
makes it it makes it drop this conceit that it's Star Trek. And it's like, oh, it's just a space adventure where they have to go seek out, no, where they have to go find new life forms to talk to. And they have the MacGuffin that they have to
Mhm.
go get the thing about the thing. And granted, there's no empire, but the empire thing is that, this should be actually what episode 10 would be, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, totally no empire, but there's this faraway alien who's destroying the galaxy and they don't know it. So we have to find them. And there's a love thing going on between Burnham or Ray and what's the other guy?
Finn?
No. No, in Star Trek, who's her love interest? Bon? Bon?
Finn?
John. No, in Star Trek. Who's Burnham's love
Oh,
interest?
and oh, book.
Book. Bon.
Well,
He's
you
her
said
bonbon.
Ray. You said Ray and book.
Try and keep up,
Okay.
Jonathan. Trying to make an analogy that is very apt. Pretend you're any other character except Michael Burnham in this show.
Right.
Um, so it would be fine, right? Like it's totally plausible. In fact, more plausible as a Star Trek. Sorry, as a Star Wars plot line than as a Star Trek plot line.
See, I wouldn't say so because it's never in Star Wars. It's never about a race. It's about either a MacGuffin. Well, it's about a MacGuffin, either an object or an individual. But it's never like they need to stop. I don't know the Enterprisians.
Yeah, but that's kind of the problem with Star Wars is that it feels like as the red letter media people might say creatively bankrupt
Mm-hmm.
and that they can't seem to get away from those three things from the original trilogy. You know, they have to everything is sort of based on those references. So like in terms of expanding out, that would be like it seems like this would be the way to do it.
Sure, I could see that.
And it just doesn't feel like Star Trek anymore. It feels way too rushed. It feels way too dictatorial on Michael Burnham's part. I was watching this recap, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have any notes because there's nothing like it's not a bad show, right? It's not like the things that are happening are narratively implausible. Like for example, the whole ending where Earth is at stake and uh Bon Bon Book is dead, but you don't think he's dead. They're trying to get to talk to the aliens and there's this whole back and forth. Like it was pretty riveting, I have to say. Uh Not in a Star Trek way, but just sort of in a space adventure way. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's not, my point is that it's not a bad show. It's just that it's now so far away from Star Trek that even in a way that you're like, we're trying to reinvent Star Trek, we're trying to modernize Star Trek for the modern audience. You could have done that. Like the first note that you could do without changing anything is don't give all the good ideas to Michael Burnham. Just give them to the person standing to her left or right, and it would probably feel a little bit more like Star Trek. But they just don't do that.
Right. Right. But they didn't do that. Um, well, yeah, and I mean that is a big part of Star Trek versus other sci-fi shows. I mean, maybe Battlestar. I can't speak to that one too much because I've never seen it, but it's not. It's an ensemble show, and everybody has the thing that they are an expert in, and everybody comes to the table. They are the smartest people in the room, and so it just seems weird that there is the smartest person in the room and it's the same person every time.
Yep.
I will say to your point about the end, like the end actually felt the most Star Trek to me because it was about communicating and it was about trying to figure out how to communicate with them and it wasn't just we need to pew pew them out of the sky.
Yeah, I guess maybe the rushed feeling
Mhm.
that kind of where every like the stakes are so well. The stakes are always high in Star Trek, I guess you could argue, but they're not rushing. They have a minute to think about something,
Right. And they think about it, yeah, and they use that
and
minute.
they think of it. Yeah.
Well, and I think the problem is kind of to that point is the fact that everything was rushed through the 13 episodes. You know, like it was the same kind of ticking clock through the whole thing. And granted, you know, it's this thing that's eating up the universe and they want to figure it out as fast as possible. I will grant you that. But they could have figured out the timeline on these things. So there's still like the very early on, so there's still that pressure of they have to figure it out before it moves again or before it finishes eating the planet or whatever. And maybe they fail like twice, you know? And so then there's that guilt and that extra pressure um before and but that speeds up the clock for them. You know, they can't they, they thought they would figure it out the first time, they thought they would figure it out the second time, they can't let it move again.
I think that the time scale is the biggest difference for me. Whereas I feel like in a Star Trek show, you'd be dealing with these galactic timescales, which are inconceivable to people, to
Mhm.
humans, right?
Mhm.
Hundreds of millions, billions of years, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And this idea that they have this giant, what did they say, 14 light years across, this giant thing that's consuming the galaxy. It felt too much like a Star Wars thing in the sense that there's an immediate threat. Whereas I think in Star Trek, they would realize that this thing is so slow moving because the galaxy is so big. And even though this thing is so large, the galaxy is whatever gigantic, scale of whatever. Um, it's still going to be hundreds of thousands of years before it consumes even a quarter, even this quadrant,
Mhm.
But we
Mhm.
need that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop it. But this concept of it's not the stakes in the sense of what's at stake, the thing that's at stake. It's the time in which we have to solve it.
Right.
And I feel like that's a big difference because you don't need it. Like the interesting part, um, I think, of Star Trek is that it's not exciting like that. It's not supposed to be exciting where they're running down the corridor and having to, we got to beam them out
Well, yeah, I mean,
before.
the exciting part, and particularly in Next Generation and in DS9 and Voyager, they took it too far to just technobabble, which this show is towing that line. But the exciting part is watching them figure it out. It's not. It's. I mean, some of them had a looming deadline on them, but it's just there is this problem and they need to figure it out. How do they figure it out? That's cool.
But that's the thing is that there's always time to have that discussion but in the ready room with whichever captain, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
always that time to sort of deliberate on what's going to happen and why they should act or if they shouldn't act.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, even in Picard, they had that discussion. And I think that they threw it in for nostalgia's sake, not because they felt like that was part of what makes Star Trek Star Trek.
Yeah, it's almost so exciting that it's boring,
Mhm.
I guess. It's sort of this my complaint about the fight scenes. It almost feels like now that they're like, well, we have to have Michael Burnham fight somebody. It's time. We've too much time has elapsed in this
Mhm.
season. The action is just it almost feels like they're shaking the camera for the sake of it because they want to keep everybody's attention. And because we didn't watch this in real time, I do wonder like what did people say? What did people like about the show? You
Right.
know?
The slow build on these things, yeah, rather than back to back to back.
Right. And I
Yeah.
I will say the concept of this weird anomaly consuming the universe, and that at a certain point, 5 episodes in, they discover that it is probably an entity doing it. It's not just this natural phenomenon.
Mhm.
That's interesting, but the way that they execute that idea is just disappointing for me as a Star Trek fan, you know?
Right. It was almost downplayed, like that was not the point of the episode. There was something else happening and then as like kind of a side B plot, it goes back to Stamets and I think Tilly and they realize if it's not self-aware on its own, it is being controlled by someone else. It's not
Right,
just a space anomaly.
right.
And like that
Yeah,
that should have been a much bigger scene of them trying to figure out, like where is it traveling and if it changes and when it changes directions, like what does that mean? That should have been a much bigger part of the episode and not just like a 3-second scene before it went back to what else was going on.
I think in terms of science fiction, it's just very light. Like they have a concept of giant thing destroying the universe,
Mhm.
and oh, it's probably because of aliens
Mhm.
outside of the galaxy. That is a good science fiction concept. For me, the most interesting science fiction scene was when they discovered that Zora was sentient. In terms of the actual execution of the concept,
Mhm.
like that felt very,
Like
I
the
don't know,
measure of an
Star.
episode, or the measure of a man episode? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because 'cause they're all sitting in a room just kinda talking.
Mhm.
There's no, "We gotta run and turn off the thing before she gets the thing,
Right.
otherwise she's gonna die." Like, there wasn't that. It was just, "Oh, she's sentient. Well, here's a button in case you wanna turn me off," and, like, just the button was just an interesting thing that they would talk about. Like, Picard would have a field day with that.
Mhm. Well, and I just speaking to that specifically, I did like her moment, where they were like, "How do you take it apart?" And she's like, "I don't know. That wouldn't have been a good self-destruct button if I knew how to turn it off."
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could have had that button be there for 9 episodes, and then they finally decide, "We don't need the button. We trust Zora." I felt like maybe they wrapped it up a little too quickly.
Mhm.
Like, the possible threat or danger that Zora provides to the ship. I don't know, they could have stretched it out, like, maybe have there be an element of Zora not being trustworthy because of all of the ways that they set up,
Right.
for a couple of episodes at least, and have her kind of earn it, and instead she kinda just earns it in that one scene, which was I don't know, I was, like, disappointed when they finally came to a conclusion.
Mhm.
It could've been more fun, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, I do think, like, in a real world scenario, it would be like, "You cannot use this ship until we figure it out," and there would be no discovery for a couple episodes.
It's just all the cast and crew reading by a window for
Right.
2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, just get all the emotional drama out of the way. That would've been good. Like, have
Yeah.
a one-off episode where we're following Book and Burnham while Discovery's figuring it out. Yeah, actually, that works.
Or maybe Berman goes on vacation.
Right? To Risa? Yeah.
Pike goes on vacation.
Yeah, it's true. To go bang all his ex-girlfriends. I was watching at, like, the 1.6, 1.7, and episode 2 was when I noticed your music comment about how every scene has music in it. Man, that episode was so distracting with the music.
Yeah. I think that they set the tone of music being just constant early on, and it
Mhm.
kind of worked for the early on seasons for some reason,
Right.
because I am someone who am totally against scoring wall to wall. I think that it loses its effect.
Sure.
Music loses its effect when you do that. What about it was difficult for you?
It felt like there was music playing in the background while they were talking, and it
Yeah.
wasn't adding anything to the scene. And so because I was watching it at an accelerated rate, like the music was playing faster than it should have, and so it was actually a detraction to the scene. It wasn't helping the scene.
Yep, it happens.
Yeah.
But think about it, like, when they have to go and capture Book and the scientist guy at the world where there's a casino, and they have to play poker at the casino, which I understand is like the Royale in
Right.
next gen,
Mhm.
but those 2 juxtaposed next to each other, right? I think is a good demonstration of why it doesn't feel like why it feels more like Star Wars than it does like Star Trek.
Yeah.
And there's a whole scene where Riker just reads from a journal, giving
Mhm.
us the backstory of the guy who died,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and he didn't come back saying, "I found this book and here's what it said." Yeah.
Yeah. Or I don't want to sound like I'm the old geezer who to get off the
Well,
lawn.
and cinema
You know.
sins, and just kind of pointing out everything wrong.
Can we talk about the galactic barrier?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a real thing. I tried to Google it quickly before the show to
Uh-huh.
see if it was sort of a an article in Scientific American that the Star Trek people have possibly read.
Right.
And I don't think it's a thing.
No.
It may be a thing in the sense that maybe there is a way that they determine what the edge of the barrier is, because space is so dilute that there really isn't an edge to anything.
Mhm.
There's not really, I mean, there was all this talk about the edge to our solar system. Like, where is it? Where
Right.
does it actually end and where does outer space begin?
Well, you're right, and it wouldn't be a circle, it would be a sphere.
Right. And it wouldn't be necessarily an even one either, I guess. Like, if you think about how things jut out and, like, and orbits are different and they're oblong and all these different things, like, it's just so much more complicated than that. So, this idea that at the edge of the galaxy, there's this super concentrated energy field that they have to get their way through. It just started to, like, this, that's such a Star Wars concept that that wouldn't exist in real life. Like, that's where my science nerd brain started going like, this doesn't even make any sense. Even if there was some sort of weird thing that is the skin of the galaxy. Like, the idea that it would be that concentrated at the edge, it would require more matter and energy than is present in the universe to surround an entire galaxy. Like, speaking of Dyson spheres, like, we were talking about how it would be just this enormous wall of stuff. Like the idea, and that would take like solar systems of matter to design one to actually make it work. The idea that all this energy surrounding a galaxy
Mhm.
would exist, and
Mhm.
it would at that level, like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like senseless,
Right.
except unless Ray had to do it, right?
But it actually does come from the original series.
It still doesn't make sense.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, like, that is something that Discovery has kind of been doing, has been, pulling moments and elements from the original series.
Did somebody from the original series go through the galactic barrier?
They went to it twice in the original series.
Oh, what happened? The same thing?
It was called by any other name. I don't think we've watched that one,
Doesn't sound like it.
right? And they went out to save a ship, and the people who had crossed over like kind of tried to hijack the Enterprise to come back.
Yeah, I just felt like this is just an obstacle that you created. It should have been Jabba the Hutt,
Right.
something like that. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be Jabba, but a Hutt, because that'd be silly. Jabba died at the end of episode 5. No, 6.
Oh yeah.
So it would be a different Hutt most likely because Ray wasn't born yet.
Right.
By the way, you promised me an answer
I know.
about
I know.
subspace communications, and I wait with anticipation
Okay.
for my answer.
So, it's actually kind of what I said. So they do wrap like a bubble around themselves to warp through subspace. So subspace travel does happen when they warp. Um, there's nothing about subspace communication versus subspace travel. So the only thing that I can think is it's just because subspace travel is literally like matter and subspace communication is just information, it's able to travel much farther, much faster.
Like, I actually don't know, like, how fast in subspace does the Enterprise go? I mean, I know
Mm,
from the outside it's going, factors of light speed, but on
right.
the inside, like, is it just sort of impulse speed and that's what's
Right.
happening?
Right. Yeah. Like, does it just feel like a leisurely stroll as you're
Right.
traveling these, as you said, factors of the speed of light?
It's all falling apart.
What? That's so weird. You mean fake science falls apart if you overthink it?
It's not fake.
But speaking of travel, like there was one moment, I think it was Dr. Kovich, where he says a 3-hour tour. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, this obscure quote from 1500 years ago? Like,
Aha, aha, aha. But if he is in fact a member of section whatever, maybe he was harvested from when Gilligan's Island was airing.
oh yeah,
Maybe that was a clue.
right, right. Yeah,
Harvested.
that's cold.
Yeah.
And did
Maybe,
you
maybe,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, no, no.
Did you notice a couple moments? I feel like it was all in one episode, but maybe it was scattered throughout. But they were definitely close together. Of the actually not knowing the the terms that were being used.
What do you mean
Um, like
not
there
knowing?
was a guy who was on the Deep Space 23 or whatever, the one that was first hit by the DMA. Um, and he said everything's squiddled. And
I missed that.
oh, and
That's really funny though.
well, yeah, and somebody looked at Burnham and she was like, it means very bad. And then when they got there, and he was like, one of my Earth crew members said this is a shit show. Is that correct?
Uh, I do remember that. I groaned.
And
I
then
groaned at
when
that.
Tilly runs up to Saru talking about something like as tall as Everest or something, and he looks at her confused, and she's like, "It's the tallest mountain on Earth."
Yeah, I don't like it. It's the same thing as like Talarkian beaver. It's the same. I have the same groans for any of that stuff.
Right. Okay, but I thought you would like the fact that just because it was translated doesn't mean that people automatically know what it is.
Yeah, that's true. It just felt like I don't know. Like you're right. You're right. It should just come out as gobbledygook, right?
That would have been amazing, right?
Right.
Everything is
Yeah, it should just sound like its original whatever it sounds like. It shouldn't be like if there's
You're like, "Who is your dialect coach?"
it just I don't know. Like I felt like at that point any kind of interesting sci-fi stuff like that, they just kind of brushed over.
Right.
Just brushed
Yeah. Yeah.
lightly.
And that actually is why I don't think this well, I should say yes, this season is still proper Star Trek, but only because of the device that was used to destroy the DMA. Like I felt like there was enough sci-fi explanation to how that thing worked and like why he needed the power source, like, that felt sci-fi enough where I was like, "Okay," but everything else that was in this season that was sci-fi, it was very technobabble.
Well, they made an isolinear bomb. Am I getting that right?
I think so, yeah.
No, they have isolinear chips. There's something else. It was another mineral or material that they used the bomb. And they're like, oh, we can't make a bomb out of this. That just destroys blah blah blah. Which
Mhm.
was kind of a reference, which is a good way to reference something like that. It was a way to use it and not just say it.
Right.
But there's kind of a thing happening for me where you're right in that it meets all the criteria, but yet it still doesn't feel right. It feels like they're checking all the boxes.
Mhm.
They're checking all they're check off the boxes.
There you go. Let's leave him out
There
of
we
it.
go. Okay, okay. um, but it still doesn't feel like Star Trek. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like genuine Star Trek. It feels like yes, you're right. They have this interesting thing where they have to destroy the thing with the thing, but it doesn't. They kind of rush through it. You know what I mean? Like they, yeah, you know what I'm getting at here. Like it just doesn't feel like I don't know if we have to update our criteria a little bit
Okay.
because the show is sneaking through.
Right?
Found a loophole.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like, it's exactly what you said, like, there's something else to making Star Trek that we have missed up to this point because they are checking off the boxes, but they're not it like you said, it's still not quite Star Trek. So, I mean, maybe there's some element where there is a
Hmm.
there's a factor considered. There is a moment where things are tossed about, to come to the conclusion.
Yeah, there's no deliberation in the show. Someone immediately has the answer for most of it, even if it's not Michael Burnham. Rarely,
Right.
there's no. It's just that they have the answer almost immediately,
Yeah.
and I feel like maybe that is a Star Trek thing.
Right.
Maybe we can adjust the language a bit.
Yeah. Is there an ethical or moral dilemma, and is there deliberation about something?
Or is there deliberation over a science fiction aspect of it? Like, I mean, we're early enough in the show. I think we can make some adjustments.
Right. I mean, we haven't even hit 25% of Star Trek yet, so, you're not wrong.
Well, they keep making new ones.
I know. I know.
Our percentage is going down the more episodes we do somehow. But yeah,
Um,
there needs to be some deliberation. That's the fun part,
mhm.
not the exciting part. I will give them that. It is not exciting to watch Jordy talk to the computer, right? It's not.
It's
I
not
get it.
exciting, you're right, but it is
No,
fun.
it's fun, but they don't get it. They don't get that it's not supposed to be exciting. That's what Star Wars is for.
Yeah.
All those guys that write for what's it called? What's this show? Discovery. They should be writing for Star Wars. They come up with good concepts like that, where you're like you're in there
So
entertained.
maybe in our second criteria point, that's kind of what we're talking about, where it's presented in a unique or novel fashion. There is an element of deliberation there because that is kind of what makes it unique or novel.
What, that it's deliberated on?
Yeah, like how it's deliberated on.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But they don't deliberate at all. It's not like they're deliberating poorly.
No,
They
I know.
don't deliberate.
Right. Right. Yeah. So maybe so our second criteria needs to be rephrased in a way because you're right. Like, yes, it's hitting that. I mean, well, and the spore drive has already been established, so that one doesn't count. But the DMA was definitely
Never
a
seen that before.
right.
Never seen
It's
it
it's a
before.
unique or novel element. But again, there's not really. a sci-fi concept to it. Well, I guess it's being controlled outside of the galactic barrier. No, it's not explained how it is.
We don't know that much about it actually.
Right.
we know we know the bullet points from Stamets.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad. It's mining boron,
Right.
and that's bad.
Corodite. Right.
And that's bad.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
I mean, that was kind of all they knew, but they didn't do anything to explore it further. So maybe, I mean, maybe that's the situation. Like what the MacGuffin that they're chasing and how they're solving it. There's not really. This is what I was talking about. There's not really sci-fi to it. Like it's presented in a sci-fi manner, but it's just technobabble using Star Trek jargon without actually providing the analogy
Yeah.
or using science and just taking it one step further because they have to take one or two steps farther away from the science fiction that was already one or two steps away from science.
We don't get to see the path of discovery. Ironically, since that's the name of the goddamn ship.
Right.
We arrive at the discovery.
Yeah.
And that was the fun part of Star Trek was that the path
Mm-hmm.
was like and the path led them down. It's like a maze, not so much a path, but a maze where they would hit a dead end and like, no, it's not working. We gotta try something else. What are we missing? We're
Right.
missing something, you know. I actually didn't really connect that Stamets is the engineer of Discovery until like the middle of season 3. I thought
Yeah.
he was just a guy. He was
Right.
just like the spore drive specialist who was on the ship. And I was like, oh, he's the engineer.
Well, yeah, but he's also kind of like a science engineer because it wasn't just about being the engineer of the ship. Like he was still focusing on his spore drive, and there were other people who were kind of doing the engineering part. But you're right.
Right. He didn't do any engineering.
Yeah.
He did all the science stuff. He was more of a science officer. That's a good point. Very astute of you.
Thanks. I try
Not
sometimes.
astute of them.
But yeah,
So,
I think
yeah.
with that adjustment, I feel confident saying no, this wasn't proper Star Trek, and I feel better saying that it didn't check off that
You
the
don't
first two boxes.
don't leave him out of this. You don't feel so dirty saying yes, it was Star Trek. I felt a
Yeah,
little dirty last week.
yeah. I think we just needed another season where it went even further down the rabbit hole for us to get to that point. But yeah, there's no deliberation about it. And again, like I said, I thinking about it further, I don't think there is any sci-fi in the plot. There are some sci-fi moments, but they weren't required for the plot.
Well, they get the
And
concepts down. I mean, they
yeah,
have concepts that are fun.
yeah,
Every season, I'm always hooked in. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. The 5, 7 red signals, that's interesting.
right.
Oh, there's a giant, multiple light year wide thing eating the universe. That's interesting.
So many interesting things, right? One thing, like just going back to the music thing, the very first episode, I don't know if you caught this or not, but the episode starts with like that tense action music as it just shows the exterior of the ship. And I was like, I don't think we've seen that since the original series.
Yeah. But like, did you not enjoy watching the show? Like, it wasn't like unenjoyable, right?
Right. No, no, no. Yeah. But I also watched Deadpool and Wolverine and I wasn't like, this is a great Star Trek episode. Like,
Really? I had the same thing. It's hard to turn it off, is what you're trying to say, right? It's hard to just not look for Star Trek things and everything.
oh no, I'm saying I can enjoy something without it being Star Trek.
Oh, I can't.
Not me, sir.
No.
But Nea Star Trek is crap.
Yeah. But it's still better than Picard.
Absolutely. Yep.
I suppose that's not a tall order, though.
No, I was gonna say the worst episode of Discovery is better than the best episode of Star Trek, or Picard, but I don't think that's true. I think there was like 2 episodes in season 3 where I was like, these are great
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe like the first 2 episodes of season 1 where we were filled with such hope.
Was it perhaps A New Hope?
Is that the only one? Is that the only title? No, Phantom Menace.
Well, they all have titles.
Right, but is that the only title that like doesn't reference Star Wars? The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi.
Phantom Menace doesn't really reference.
Right.
There's no Count Menace.
Right. There's
Count.
And what was 789? It was The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. What was episode
What's the
7?
7 8? What why does 6 7 8? Why does 5 why does
Well,
5 6 7? Because 7 8 9. What is it?
why is 6 afraid of 7?
Oh, okay. Well, that's not as good. It should just be like three numbers. Why does 5 6 7? Because 7 8 9. That's
Well,
better.
because 7 is a registered 6 offender.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Thanks. There were 2 scenes where they did the jump from a different perspective. Did you see that?
No, what?
There
When was
was
that?
there was one jump where they kept Discovery level and they had the stars
Oh, I see what you're saying.
spin around it. And then they did one where they were in the bridge showing everybody spin around when they jumped.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never clear if the ship is actually turning like that or if there's some sort of distortion happening.
Mhm.
Like, is the ship turning or is that the mycelial network doing that?
I mean, based on those 2 shots, I would say that it's the ship turning.
I know they
And
ruined it, didn't they?
yeah, and just because of the gravity hold, like they don't that's got to be what makes it so unsettling is suddenly the stars are spinning around you but you're not feeling it. Like
They go from not spinning to like 2000 RPM,
right. Yeah.
but like they get a little hit from a phaser and it rocks the whole thing. And like, how is that possible? What's going on? There's
Well,
got to be something else going on.
I think we've already talked about this. It's because the ship knows that it's about to spin, so it's already making all the calculations and adjustments. Whereas with a phaser blast, that's an outside influence.
But they know the phaser blast is coming. They're like, incoming, direct hit to the thing. Like
Right.
they know it, they know it's coming.
There's no like no impact at all to the ship. Like they're like incoming and just
I know, wouldn't that be so unexciting?
they're all sitting super steadily as like the comm just explodes next to them.
Well, it's funny because that's how it is when they shoot it.
Right.
You know, it looks really slick when they're shaking the camera, but they're just standing there.
Yeah.
It must be so hard to do that and actually sell it
Right.
because nothing's happening. It's like we're supposed to laugh at a joke 10 times in a row and laugh hilariously. Like it's got to be so hard to do
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and make it work, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been Paul.
And I'm a Jonathan.
What are we watching next week, Jonathan?
We're finishing it up. We're doing the swan song of
Last,
Discovery.
the last season
Fat lady's
of
warming up her
Discovery.
pipes. Are we still allowed to say that?
The fat lady?
Yeah. Like, is that
Mm,
because it's not referencing anyone specific, and like
right.
it is referencing historically that the soprano was a larger woman to belt the pipes,
Well, and she's happy with her weight.
right?
So I think it's okay.
Okay, glad we covered that.
And this has been the measure of an episode.
I sent off some hydrocarbons.
Oh, nice. That was good.